we are going to review is what we did on Monday with analyzing the prompt and then coming up with a thesis statement. So one of the first things that I did when I was reading through my prompt was I tried to figure out what type of essay that I was going to be writing. So we found the word changed here, introducing our first type of essay that we are going to be talking about, which is telling us that we are writing a change in continuity essay. Because the wording is asking changed, it is asking for two changes and one continuity. Then we went through and we looked for the location, the time period, and spices. One of the things that we talked about specifically with location was that we wanted to keep in mind that each of our claims should be able to be used throughout the entire world and not specific to one region or one place. We then went through and brainstormed for some different ideas. You guys gave me a lot of great ideas on changes or things that were happening in commerce as well as interactions. So we went through, remember, we also gave a beginning and an end because that's eventually what we put into our thesis statement. So when we talked about the silver trade from 15.2, we said, well, prior to silver trade, this is what it was like, and then it changed to using silver trade by the end. Same thing when we talked about the expanding European empires. We said, well, at first everyone was secluded, or that everyone was in their own region, specifically with Western Europeans and the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages, and then we moved into talking about how everyone is now connected because of European domination of trading post empires in Asia, as well as, oops, I didn't have it in here, and colonies in the Americas. So I made sure to have that in there. And then lastly, we had a continuity. Again, a continuity is something that stays the same throughout this time period. I should be able to find evidence that we have used, or that people used slaves in 1450, so the beginning of our time period, and that people used slaves in 1750 as well. As a class, we then wrote our thesis statement. So here's our thesis statement one more time. It says, during the 1450 to 1750 time period, the use of slaves around the world continued. And again, I'm using that word continued here because I want it to sound as if I have read the prompt and I'm answering it with my continuity or one of my claims. So here's one of my claims again, that use of slavery. You will also notice I have said where I am, the time period, and then again that piece of the chart that I need, or the piece of my essay I need right now. It then says commerce changed from trading of local goods to the global use of silver. Here's another claim. So again, from trading local goods to the use of silver. In addition to interactions changing, and here is my last claim in my thesis statement. Interaction changing from regions to trading post empires. Again, I use that word change to tip off my reader that I will, after my continuity, be talking about two things that have changed. Your thesis statement may be one sentence. I would say more often than not, especially in AP World History, we are going to be writing potentially two, maybe even three, depending on your thesis statement length or your claims length. When you are writing in your essay then, because the use of slavery is the first thing presented in our thesis statement, per good writing, we are going to make sure that our first body paragraph has to do with a continuity. Our second one will then do with the trading of local goods, and the third one with seclusion or becoming those trading post empires. For the sake of today, just because I think that writing changes are easier, we're going to stick with changes, so we're going to hop down all the way to paragraph number 2. When we hop down to paragraph number 2, you're going to see that we're going to write a topic sentence here. The best part about topic sentences is that we don't really need to think far and above and beyond what we did with our thesis statement for them. In fact, what I am going to do is literally go up and copy and paste from my thesis statement the commerce change from trading of local goods to the global use of silver, and post that below in paragraph number 2. So again, I'm just posting that below right here. And then what I'm going to be having to do is finding evidence. What I always tell students is if we were going to go back in time, evidence is the specifics that you would point out of how you know that that thing happened. So you could tell me, I see this, I see this, I see this. Analysis would then be taking it one step further and telling me, why do you see those things, or why did those things happen? So again, here I should be able to give examples, or in my evidence I am looking for examples of local goods traded, giving hints to you of chapter 8 as well as chapter 13 with the Aztecs and the Incas. So those trade routes will give you examples of local goods being traded. In the during, then, I talked about how do you know that silver is introduced. And last but not least, sorry, that one is from 15.2. And then last but not least, I am looking for evidence of silver in the global market. Specifically, silver leaving its place of origin, and now where is it really being integrated into society? Again, we're going to talk about that in 15.2 as well as in some of the coming sections. So what then I did is I paused, and this is maybe where you would like to pause the video so that you can see or look through your notes for these examples. Each group or some of our classmates then pointed some things out to me. So here are some of the things that were written. When we talked about examples of local goods being traded, we talked specifically about within the Aztec Empire, how they're going to trade textiles and jewelry. And then we talked about along the Silk Road, specifically from China, how merchants are going to use luxury goods, such as silk and paper. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write in sentences before the 1500s, noting that this is the beginning of my era. People around the world used goods to trade or even pay for taxes. Marketplaces in the Aztec Empire traded textiles and jewelry. Along the Silk Roads, merchants bought and paid for goods using luxury goods such as silk, porcelain, textiles, and paper. So again, these are things I found specifically in my notes that I am now adding. I can say, here's a specific, I could go back in time and point to textiles or point to jewelry that was traded within the Aztec Empire. We then did the same thing with the introduction of silver here. Again, if you need to pause the video and either write my evidence from the top or pause to look through your notes for the introduction of silver, please do that. What our classmates then talked about is in 15.2, that introduction of silver. We first started off by talking about how the Spanish are going to colonize portions of South America, specifically Bolivia, where that silver is going to be found. We really wanted to hone in or then emphasize that one city in Bolivia called Potosi, in which those mines are going to be. And then how it's going to be introduced to the world. It's going to go from Potosi to the Philippines, because remember, they wanted to be in close proximity with the Chinese for trading. So what I'm going to write is in the 1500s, so now I'm talking about during this time period, that the Spanish colonized parts of South America, including Bolivia. So again, I found this portion about the Spanish colonizing in my notes. That's from my notes. Bolivia is also in my notes. I said here the Spanish discovered silver in the city of Potosi and started to mine. Again, I know this one specific city because it is in my notes. Then I'm going to talk about how the Spanish are going to move this silver to their Asian colony, the Philippines, to be in close proximity to China for trading. So again, I found this out from looking in my notes. So we are moving it from Bolivia to the Philippines via the Spanish. And then the very last one that I'm going to be talking about is evidence. How do I know that silver is now in the global market? As I look at the end of my notes for chapter 15.2, I notice that 15.2 is going to talk a lot about how the Ming Dynasty is going to require China to pay all of their taxes in silver. So then we talked a lot about how the farmers and the merchants are going to have to pay for said taxes in silver, which means that they also are going to want to trade with others, specifically the Europeans and the Spanish, to get silver during this time period. So what I am going to write is, by the end of this time period, the Chinese government would require their people to pay taxes in silver. This forced merchants and farmers to trade with the Spanish in order to get silver for taxes. In addition, this changed the Chinese economy to becoming commercialized and regionally specialized. Again, Europeans want Chinese goods, and therefore they are willing to give all of this silver to them or trade all of that silver. So I found these things in my notes. The very last thing then that we have to go through is talking about analysis. Again, analysis is telling me, why did this happen? As I just said, Europeans want these goods, and therefore they are willing to trade all of the silver in the world for them. So we are going to talk about two driving forces. Two driving forces behind this change. The greed of the Chinese. Two driving forces were the greed of the Chinese government for silver and the Europeans' desire for Chinese goods. The Spanish had the natives mine. So again, the Spanish had the natives mine excessively in order to give this silver to the Chinese in exchange for Chinese goods. So we had the Spanish bringing the silver from their colonies. This also led the Chinese government and people becoming reliant on silver, much like the Spanish, in order to be a part of this global network. So again, everyone is now wanting silver, they're trying to get it, and so that's what we talked about in my analysis. I'm talking about why this happened, and it's really these two pieces of the government wanting silver for taxes, people now have to find a way to get silver, and then that European desire for Chinese goods. Your analysis should be anywhere between 3 and 5 sentences, depending on how precise that you can be. And then this is what a completed paragraph should look like, minus obviously my prompts here in order to find information. So I hope this video helps you in writing your change paragraph for your your change of continuity essay.